James, what on earth are cycling videos doing on a site showing Jesus' way, his example that you see in his words and example in the four Gospels? You call it Jesusanity. James, what does that have to do? What does cycling have to do with that? Well, it has a lot to do with that for James. The only one he can speak to, the only lab rat he's got control of. Sorry, lab rats. For 7 years, James has been trying to figure out how to have a joyful, abundant relationship with this effectively 2,000-pound e-bike solar micro RV. 7 years. Now, if he were sane, he would have given up 7 years ago, maybe, probably. But he thought, I think there's a way to understand this that would not only be great exercise, but joyful, abundant life. 7 years. There have been glimmers, but we haven't understood what produced the glimmers, and they went away. We didn't have an adequate faith, and by faith, Jesus seems to have meant vision, understanding, the eye unclouded, the eye with a clear lens, a clear understanding. And that is what Jesus' way, as James sees it from Jesus' words and example in the Gospels, and nowhere else in human history does he see it. That's what Jesus' way, that he calls Jesusanity, is to James in his 70-plus year quest to have joyful, abundant life in this hell world that we've created. This hell world we have created of the Garden of Eden that Creator gave us. And by way of analogy, the following video is by way of analogy, it is the effective way of understanding cycling. Hauling this 2,000 pounds, pulling like two horses in a team. This 2,000-pound wonderful vehicle through space. Without that vision, it has been hell. It has also been heaven, but it has been hell. Now it's just heaven. Exercise isn't hell. Using our talents isn't hell. Using them when we don't understand the meaning of it. We don't understand the purpose and the impact of the exertion. That's hell. The exertion isn't hell. The exertion, when we have meaning, is life itself. Joyful, abundant life. Cycling. Hauling. Cranking. Hauling that semi-truck that is behind us, hauling what I judge to be an amount of weight right now, 10 pounds, hauling 10 pounds as judged by the pressure of my legs that are doing the hauling, that are hauling the weight, the pressure that it causes in my lower back. And among other things, I'm resisting the tendency very gladly to change the amount of weight as the conditions of the road change, as we are going up an incline, for example. Rather, I am adjusting the controls, primarily the motor, so that we maintain velocity and cadence. That is, I am continuing to just do the share that I've taken on. 10 pounds as felt in my lower back as my legs hauling my share cause that exertion on my lower back against the back of the seat. This is the answer to a 7-year prayer. There are dozens of counter impulses that gravity and weight and shifting weight and changing momentum and changing angles of the shins relative to where they are on the pedals invites us to be tempted to pursue and manage and solve. But this mental imagery that we are part of a team of people hauling this vehicle forward, I happen to be out front with a mechanism that my legs can operate, a leverage mechanism with crank arms, but a mechanism that I can use to take on a certain amount of weight as my responsibility. And my joyful sacred duty is to maintain that amount of weight as felt in my back as my legs are hauling that weight forward, cranking that weight forward. Oh, it is a wonderful solution. It is maybe the solution that if I were on a cat trike, a conventional recumbent bike, cycling it may have taught me in less than 5 minutes, because instead of being diluted by 80%, it would have been just right there, pure, straight up, obvious. I don't know. I'll never know. But, oh my goodness, what a difference it makes having a mental model that has some correspondence to what the body is experiencing, so that together they can keep things purposeful, meaningful, manageable. Wow. Pulling a cart as a team of horses might. Hauling. Cycling. A 2,000-pound micro RV. Well, this may be the mother of all rediscoveries, and it didn't come to conscious competence in Iowa, but it may have been the central operative unconscious discovery of Iowa. The moving legs, as they must, if the buttocks is planted on the seat and the cranks are moving, the legs must be moving. And they form from the shins, the feet, and the ankles, and maybe the thighs a little bit, form a virtual object. And I suppose this is probably unimportant, but I don't know that. I suppose it is a gyroscope sort of object. So if you push on an object, if you push on a gyroscope, it resists. Now, the gyroscope analogy is important only to try and visualize what's going on between about 6 or 7 inches in front of the perineum to the crank area. That it acts like a gyroscope may be incidental and unimportant. But it is to the thighs, it is an object. It has mass. Well, no, it offers predictable resistance to the thighs. Well, for 7 years, every once in a while we've sensed this, but hey, this doesn't make any sense, and we haven't had the courage of our convictions, sort of the story of our life. But as I'm now realizing that the moving feet, ankles, calves, shins have the property together, their movement, they have the property of an object. A ball, it feels like. A spinning ball of substance. We can understand it as that ball, that spinning ball, is the object, like is it called the traces or the harness for horses? It is the traces that we can pull against. Now, we've come close to this, but hey, we're not pulling against anything. This is silly. Yes, we are. That spinning area of the legs has the properties of an object. And the thighs, if we push that object forward and we imagine that it is linked to the vehicle behind us, as in us, gospel here, behind us is where we envision the weight. By pushing that object, by pushing that ball forward, by hauling it forward, we are hauling the object behind us. And we have all of the more than enough tactile feedback to give us the reinforcement we need. Unless we do what we've been doing for 7 years, which is out of a mistaken sense of responsibility, we have tried to atomize that ball into what are the feet doing? What are the toes doing? What are the ankles doing? What are the calves doing? Where are the crank arms? Now, where are they now? This instant. In which case, it is no longer a ball that the thighs can push against. The thighs are rendered irrelevant. Wow, 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 and wow. Much to learn here. Hauling, pulling, as in horses in pulling a wagon. This is so exciting. This is so gratifying. After all this time, something elegantly simple model, totally adequate for what we want to do. Very intuitive model, and just there it was an hour ago. So the legs are 2 horses, one each, in a harness. And the harness is felt primarily at the chest, but in this case the chest is the back of the thighs. And James is the operator. James is the one influencing how things go, with some influence over what the horses are doing. It is amazing. Let's see, we're just at 63 watts human output per hour, 71, 81, 83 as we're climbing a bit. These are not great numbers, but they're more than adequate. More than adequate. We've been cycling for probably an hour and a half every day, long, hard day. More than adequate. As a matter of fact, on an unloaded conventional bicycle, we'd probably be doing 14 or 15 miles an hour right now. Very respectable. And the tactile feedback aligns with these two horses, their chests, the back of the thigh, pulling into the harness, which is the resistance they feel, which happens when everything from the knee on down is allowed to be fluid. And when it's allowed to be fluid, the ball spoken of a moment ago, the space of, well, the gyroscope space that can be pushed against emerges. And when we lock up, as we have been forever, when we lock up a component, particularly the ankles, the foot, the gyroscope that we can push against, which is the harness that the all-important thighs can feel, goes away. This must be a phenomenon that cyclists know. Or it may just be so much an instant natural product of a conventional bicycle that no one has had to discover it. The traces that we can push against to do our share of hauling, our share of pulling, as in fact we are almost never less than 3 or 4 horses in the harness, often only 2 of 12 or 20 counting each leg. It's amazing how little pressure, a pound, half a pound, we need to feel against the harness to do 12 miles an hour worth of energy in a conventional bicycle. 60 human watts right now. To do 80 requires maybe 5 pounds of pressure by way of how we experience it. Felt primarily at the back of the thigh, the chest of the horse. We can also feel it in the feet, but I suspect, I know that today, and I suspect long term, if this model is a persistent value, as I anticipate it will be, just as with the horse, the primary encounter with the harness must be felt in the chest, the back of the thigh, not the foot. That must be secondary. And I think this has to do with the leg being in the proper posture relative to this whole real and virtual mechanism, this gyroscope. is virtual, and it is the most important element that we can encounter. It is our harness, this virtual thing, the virtual harness. Oh man, very, very encouraging. Amazing. So the prior segment today was an incredible epiphany. The last one. No, not the last one. Oh my gosh. So the major residue of the prior epiphany today, the residue now is the notion of moving in a harness, running in a harness, running in a harness, pulling a very, 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 very heavy trailer with others. And it's a long run, hours and hours and hours and hours. And in such situations, you learn. And that's what's going on here. It is hours and hours and hours. It is a very heavy harness. And what we've learned is we are running in a harness. And where that harness is somewhat predictable. And it is moving through space. And it is not impacted by us. We can't change the velocity of that, the momentum of that, the speed of that, even a little bit. And that's fine. But we want to do our part. We want to do what we can. So what has evolved here, don't think we've ever had before, is that we're running at the same pace as this vehicle. There's a sense of running at the same speed, but in such a way that we are adding energy, maybe slightly. That's felt in the chest, but it's felt in the body. We know that we are running alongside, that it really doesn't matter to the vehicle if we stop, because it's going to keep going. The other forces are going to keep it moving. But we want to do our part, so we're mindful of running along with and a little bit faster. So on average, we know that we are bearing some of the weight on us. We are hauling things forward. Not sure if this was in the prior segment. It's too important not to mention. Hours after the wonderful epiphany of this morning. But the major residue now is the notion of being part of a team. There's not the clarity of a harness, but being part of a team. And we're running now, running at the same speed as the vehicle, running along with the vehicle so that we can carry our share, we can contribute our share, we can, as a horse in a harness would, do what we can to contribute our share to the rest of the team. And this notion of being in the harness, running at the same speed as everyone and doing our share is so new and so wonderful and so wonderful. It may be what all this has been trying to tell us. It's not hugely powerful, but this is probably the 4th or 5th hour now 83, 80, yep, very smooth. The whole leg is running. I don't know how to describe it other than that, and running doesn't capture it, but everything is. All the muscles are running. And not to detract from the other psychoanalyst modes, but we're using the throttle mode, the power throttle mode for the pedal assist system, which means that adjusting with our 3-position and 2-position switches, we're selecting the amount of throttle. And unlike the torque sensor mode, which is very nice, which gives a multiple of the human power, that probably is not what we want to use in the future, because it suggests that James can influence the speed of this 2,000-pound vehicle, and that is an illusion that just seems to have no benefit whatsoever, other than constantly leading us away from what we've discovered today. Now, on a 100-pound vehicle, oh, that's a whole different thing. But on this one, no, it is a very unwelcome illusion that no way do we need. No way does it help us.